Welcome to another episode of the Para Cave podcast. And now over to your host, Troy Warner, broadcasting live from the world-famous Para Cave.
And yes, hello and welcome back to another episode of the Para Cave podcast. And this is the interview-based podcast that I do with celebrity fans, regular fans of rugby league, also former players, coaches, administrators. So today it is with a person who has been in the media and is a massive rugby league fan and is an ambassador for the Gold Coast Titans as well. You would have recognised him from Channel 7 from over the years, being the chief sports reporter there at Channel 7, and more recently he was on 2GB Drive. Now he, and also as I said, he is a Gold Coast Titans ambassador and a Queensland State of Origin fan as well, but we won't hold that against him anyway, because he is a great bloke and one that I have had the pleasure of talking to previously on a couple of occasions, and that is of course Mr. Jim Wilson. Now it is a really interesting chat with Jim, as he has followed rugby league for a very long time and has some great stories about reporting on it, also being involved as a fan, how he got into rugby league as well. So this will be brought out in two episodes, two parts, as it has been the last few weeks of the podcast, which I hope you have been enjoying it that way. So look, that's enough of me talking. Sit back, or as Hindy says, I forgot about that one, didn't I? I forgot about that part. As Hindy says,
get a beer, coffee, whatever you want.
Sit back, relax, and enjoy, and let's get straight into it. And today on the podcast, I've got a very special guest. Well, they're all very special guests that I talk to. I get the privilege to talk to a lot of special people, but this one I have spoken to a few times out in the field. He is a rugby league lover and also a journalist who's worked in the 7 Network for over 28 years and also on radio as well, most recently on 2GB. Welcome to the Para Cave podcast, Mr. Jim Wilson.
How are you, Troy?
Fantastic. Thank you very much for joining me.
Pleasure, mate. It's always good to chat with you, and I love your passion for for sport, but in particular for rugby league and your beloved Eels, mate. It's nice to be back having a chat with you.
No worries. Well, let's go back to the start, and where, as I said, you're a massive rugby league lover. Where did your passion for rugby league begin?
Well, I grew up on the Gold Coast, so I was born and raised on the Gold Coast, and so my grandfather, Bill Hamilton, who owned a local news agency in Surfers Paradise, was a mad Dragon supporter, and the ritual was every Saturday or Sunday afternoon, in particular Saturday afternoon, with Rex Mossop and with Barry Ross sideline eye, and it was all about rugby league.
Okay.
So we from the age of, I can remember, like 5-6 years of age, we'd sit in front of the box on a Sunday arvo. We'd go up to the old, what was the old Lang Park, now Suncorp Stadium, to watch Valleys in the local Queensland Rugby League. I was a mad Valleys fan, and they played Redcliffe and they played Norths and Easts and Wynnum Manly, Western Suburbs. So it was a combination of not just NRL but also QRL, and that's where the love started. But it's a great game. It's a game that I have covered, as you just mentioned, for the 7 Network, and then obviously my radio show on 2GB was not just sport, it was politics and everything else, but we did a lot of rugby league because obviously 2GB's got a pretty rich background and heritage in rugby league. So I suppose it's just been one of those things where I love all sport, and I've covered 8 Olympics, and I've done a few Paralympics, and I've done Ashes tours in England and British Open golf, but there's something about rugby league that I think is so unique, and I love Origin. I've covered so many Origin series, and to this day I still I'm always at every Origin hosting functions or emceeing functions, and I still keep a finger in the pie, so to speak. But it's it's a game that I've always loved and cherished, and from an early age, it was something that was just in the household every weekend, and it just went from there.
Well, let's dive into that, because obviously born in Queensland, you're a Queensland fan and a Queensland supporter. What has been some of your favourite Origin memories from over the years?
Oh, gee, where do you start? I mean, the Mark Coyne try, the King going head to head with MG, there's so many memories, mate. Yeah. Like that golden era where they had that incredible run. With JT, Slater, Smith, the whole bit, you keep Lockyer, it was Origin, and certainly growing up on the Gold Coast, one of the big treats was actually going up to Lang Park, going up the old Pacific Highway, which has changed dramatically now. It used to take a lot longer than it does now. Yep. But it's make the trip up from the Gold Coast to Brisbane, head to the old Lang Park. I've stood on the hill at the old Lang Park.
Okay.
I've gone to the Caxton and run the gauntlet, and watched the New South Welshmen cop it over the years. And it's tribalism, it's great theatre, and it's not just a rugby league game. It's a great event on the calendar, and I think, certainly to this day, I mean, everyone says, Origin's lost some of its gloss. I don't agree with that. I think Origin is still, a great spectacle. And I think this year with Brisbane, Perth, Sydney, I think we're in for another great Origin series, obviously with a new Blues coach, with Michael Maguire departing the building and going to the Brisbane Broncos. And I'm rapt to see Laurie Daly back there, and we can talk about that a bit more, a bit later. But I think Laurie Daly was very stiff to lose the gig, and I'm very, very happy that he's back, got the job back. So I'm very good. I'm good mates with Laurie, and I think Laurie, along with Craig Bellamy in the coach's box, I think they'll be a very formidable combination.
Yeah, unfortunately for yourself, being a Queenslander. Fortunately for myself, hopefully the Blues get it done again.
No, I think, and I'm not just saying this, but the Queenslanders are great at the old reverse psychology, saying, they love the underdog status. But, Joe, truly, I think New South Wales, when you look at what they did last year, and I think with Laurie, even though there's been a change of coach, and Billy Slater's done a wonderful job with Queensland, and Queensland always lift a gear when they've got the Maroons jumper on, but I do feel like the New South Wales is starting to get that same sort of culture and that winning culture and the privilege of pulling on a Blues jumper. I think that Queensland's always had that. New South Wales has had it now and then, but not as full on as it should be. And I think now they're getting that. I think New South Wales start favourites, and I think probably New South Wales win the series. But having said that, I'm looking forward to game one. Will be interesting in Brisbane, and then obviously if the Queenslanders can win that at home, they'll go to Perth full of confidence. But it's going to be a really interesting series.
Covering many State of Origin series, has there been any funny or famous moments that you've been involved in with players or coaches or anything to do with State of Origin over the years as a reporter? Yeah,
I think as a reporter, obviously I worked predominantly. I started at Channel 9, so we, obviously Channel 9 had the rights, and so I started at 9 in Brisbane.
Yep.
Well, going back in 1987, I started. And I think, obviously, when I moved from 9 to Channel 7 were the non-rights holders, and it was interesting. It was a different perspective as a non-rights holder, but still, standing out the front of, whether it be the SCG in the old days or, the SFS or Sydney Olympic Stadium at Homebush or Suncorp Stadium in Brisbane, Melbourne. I've covered Origins there. I've covered Origin in Adelaide, Perth. So I think as far as funny moments go, I think, there's always great characters. I think when I think back at some of my fun moments covering sport, not just rugby league, I think of people like, Blocker Roach and Benny Elias and Wally Lewis, Alfie Langer, Jonathan Thurston and that laugh.
Yes.
It's just, you think about those moments. And Gordy Tallis, I love Gordy Tallis. I think, he wears his heart on his sleeve and he's forthright, but he bleeds maroon, and he's also got a wicked sense of humour. So, and you throw in people like Mark Geyer, Royce Simmons, who recently just got an Australia Day honour. I was rapt for Royce. I think that he so deserves that. And then I think about people like the old cattle dog call that Tommy Raudonikis and Arthur Beetson. They this is where it all began as far as Origin goes, and I loved all that pre-game theatre and banter between, Tommy and Billy Moore. They get stuck into each other and stuff. And, I think it was great banter, and I think it was in good spirit. And I used to love when Tommy used to fire up and fire the troops up. And, there's been some good moments over the years.
Now, in your opinion, is State of Origin the football at the pinnacle of rugby league, and involving Australian rugby league as well? Is Origin the pinnacle?
What, compared to a grand final?
Well, yes, and also representing your country as well.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that, as soon as you asked that question, I automatically thought grand finals. But you're right, representing the Kangaroos and the Australian Women's Rugby League team as well. It's a huge honour representing your country. So as far as pinnacle goes, listen, I think Origin's the jewel in the crown. I think that Origin, it is there's 3 games over a 9-week period. And it's just, it's great theatre. And I think, I love to be a premiership winning team is something, to win the World Cup if you're a Kangaroo or Australian Women's Rugby League team member. It's a huge honour. But I think Origin is the jewel in the crown. And that goes for both men's and women's. I think women's Origin has just been, we saw last year, great success. Women's Rugby League, I love watching it. And I thought that those crowds and the way that the NRL promoted it was absolutely superb. So I'm talking a lot about, Alfie and Lewis and Mortimer and, JT, but we shouldn't forget that women's rugby league is on the rise, and women's sport in general has been flying for a number of years. And you throw in, the Australian Women's Rugby League team and New South Wales, Queensland in Origin in women's rugby league, and you've got the Matildas, and you've got the Australian Women's Cricket team, you've got our netballers who have been so dominant for so long, our hockey roos have won Olympic gold. I mean, you name it. Women's sport, and our women's swimmers, for example, in Paris last year were just dominant. And I think that we should, when we talk about rugby league, it's not just about the blokes. It's and I'm not just saying this just purely out of tokenism. It's women's rugby league is a fantastic spectacle and a great celebration of the game.
Oh, for sure, 100%. I think one of the greatest moments and one of the greatest tries you'll ever see in Origin was last year with Jamie Chapman up at Suncorp Stadium, practically running the length of the field, and just the speed that she ran at and beating all defenders. That was an awesome try, and there's plenty of those moments in those Origin games. Yeah,
absolutely.
And normal NRLW as well.
Exactly right. Yeah, I think NRLW is a terrific competition. I think the NRL's nailed it. I think they've really nailed it. I think AFLW's, it's going okay, but I think certainly from my perspective, and I love AFL football, but I think certainly, without sounding derogatory towards AFL women's players, I think the NRL women's competition and women's Origin is just, it's fantastic to watch. And I think they've done a very, very good job in nurturing talent, pathways programs, and making it a great spectacle for all fans.
I know the NRL needs to promote rugby league across Australia, but do you think State of Origin should be just played in Brisbane and Sydney?
Yeah, you're asking a traditionalist, mate. The answer is a definite yes. So I think, I love the MCG. I think the MCG as a coliseum is just, there's nothing like it. I mean, and that's not being disrespectful to Homebush or SCG. I mean, I love the SCG, and I love the new Allianz. I love CommBank Arena, your home, your beloved spiritual home of football. But I think the MCG is the best stadium, and that precinct in Melbourne is the best precinct in the world. We saw that with the tennis recently. Amy Stadium's not far away. You've got, Rod Laver Arena. You've got the MCG. It's an amazing setup, close to the city, foot traffic, trams taking you right to the doorstep. But it's funny, I think that for a rectangular game, like rugby league, and we'll see this with the British and Irish Lions this year when they come out, which will be huge in Melbourne, which I'll be attending. And I'm sure it'll be a great night because the MCG and the MCC put on a fantastic display and spectacle. But there's something about playing a rectangular game at the Melbourne Cricket Ground, and for that matter, Perth's the same.
Yes.
I think, it's one of those things where, not just that though, I think, and this is where as much as I love promoting sport around the country, and I love Melbourne, and I love the Adelaide Oval, and I like the Perth Stadium, but I just think State of Origin is about State of Origin. It's about Queensland and New South Wales, and I think it should be in Queensland and New South Wales. And if that means we got to play it at Townsville or have to play a game at, for example, at Newcastle, no dramas, no dramas. I mean, the issue with I suppose taking a game to Newcastle, and I think it was, I think it's a great idea, but I suppose you're denying a lot of fans the chance to go because the capacity
that's right.
of Newcastle is not what it is of the Olympic Stadium. But I think it should be played in Queensland and it should be played in New South Wales. And again, with due respect to Melbourne, which is a wonderful sporting city, and Adelaide and Perth, I just think, okay, money talks, and those governments pay a lot of money to secure the rights to Origin.
Yep.
But I just think, you know what, there's enough money to go around with Queensland and New South Wales in Queensland and New South Wales. The New South Wales government pay a lot of money. The Queensland government pay a lot of money. Plus you throw in Vegas. And I think I don't know. I just think there's enough spreading the word of rugby league, and the audiences in Victoria and South Australia and WA, but in particular Victoria with Origin TV audiences, the ratings are always really high. So it doesn't mean you have to go and play them in that backyard in Melbourne. Right. It still has a huge amount of. It's still hugely popular in those markets. So no, going back to your original question, I'm staunch. I want to see it played in Queensland and in New South Wales.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that one as well. I'm a bit of a traditionalist as well. Going back to Clubland, and you mentioned the Dragons before growing up. Who were was the Dragons your team then that you supported? Since there was no Queensland teams at that point, or was it Queensland Rugby League teams that you supported?
Exactly. I loved. I mean, my grandfather loved, like Teddy Goodwin, and he loved like Steve Morris, Harry Barth, the coach, and he loved the Dragons and loved St George. But we used to watch a lot of those games, but we were also watching a lot of the local competition in the QRL. So. Oz Valleys through and through, and Ross Strudwick, Peter McWhirter, they had a really good team, and so I think I had a great interest in Canterbury, St George, Para, Manly, but my love and passion back then was QRL and was Valleys.
Some would have even said that at one point there in the 80s that Queensland Rugby League would have been a tougher competition than the New South Wales Rugby League.
Don't know about that. It was a high quality competition, and it had a big following. I used to love to go into some of those games in suburban grounds like Newman Oval, Bishop Park, Purtell Park. There were Langlands Park was another one. They were really good. It was good fun. And you had a lot of star power on show, and you used to they used to pile on the hill, it was like a real suburban feel, but very tribal as well, because a lot of them had intense rivalries. They were a bit like right now with the great rivalries with with Para and Manly and the Bulldogs and Para and you name it, Para and Penrith. I mean, that tribalism is what we love about sport and rugby league. And that certainly was on show in the QRL as well as I was growing up.
Now, you're also a Gold Coast Titans ambassador. Now, they came into the competition in 2007. So I guess your allegiances are now with them. How did that all come about?
Well, Gold Coast born and raised, and I suppose when they came into the comp, they approached me to be I was one of the first ambassadors, actually, going back all those years, and I can't believe that's 2007. But I suppose I was born and raised, went to school on the Gold Coast. I left the Gold Coast when I was like 17, 18, and went to England on a scholarship and to play a lot of cricket. And then, came back, got my cadetship at the Queensland newspapers at the Courier Mail, then I went to Channel 9 Brisbane. But I suppose, I used to have a soft spot for the Broncos, but once the Titans came in, I just thought, you know what, I'm a Gold Coast boy. I've got to go for them. So, and then they made me an ambassador, and to this day I'm an ambassador. So I'd like to get to more games, obviously being based in New South Wales and predominantly, spending most of my time in New South Wales. So I don't get to as many games as I'd like at Robina on the Gold Coast, but when they're down here, I get to a few games, and I'm glad. I think under Des Hasler, I've got a fairly good feeling about this year. I think I don't think we're going to be. I don't know if we'll be top four, but I'd like to think we'll be playing finals footy. And that's the background of my love of the Titans.
What have been some of your favourite Titans players and moments from over the years? Because they've had a couple.
Yeah, they have, haven't they? I mean, it's Preston. I think when you think about Preston Campbell, and I think he's a great player and a great ambassador. But I think there's been, when you think about over the years with the Titans, they've had some really, really good players, and I think they've made some. I don't know. I was never convinced about Hayne going there. But I think, he's a prolific talent, but I just didn't think it was the right fit. But I think they did that a bit like the Lance Franklin thing with the Swans. I think it was just to get bums on seats, and as a marketing sort of tool, it was I think that's why they made that call. But I wasn't that comfortable with him going there, and purely for the reason I just didn't think there was that much value out on field. But yeah, I think over the years, I think as a team they've developed, and obviously they've got to a preliminary final. They're yet to win a premiership. I'd like to think they could win a premiership soon. But I think when you look at Penrith and the Storm, it's not easy to win, are they? I mean, they're especially when you've had a golden era like the Panthers, it makes it terribly challenging. But I think under Desi Hasler, they're heading in the right direction, and I'm hoping. With my Titans blood running through the veins, I hope they're playing finals footy at the business end of the season.
Do you think the Gold Coast area is a tough sporting area in terms of trying to lure talent there and stuff like that? Because we've seen them sort of struggle a lot over the years, especially in those early years when they were the Seagulls and the Giants, but they just haven't really cracked consistent top 8.
No, it's difficult. It's the same for the Gold Coast Suns in AFL. It's difficult to get to attract and then retain players. Most of them are coming. I mean, some of them from local juniors, but most are coming from other parts of Australia and other parts of Queensland and other parts of New South Wales. And so to attract them and then retain them is very, very difficult. And I suppose that's where someone like a Des Hasler comes in, and then you have players who, Desi's coached the Titans, righto, okay. Oh, Kieran Foran's gone to the Titans. Okay, well, it must be a pretty good setup. So that's where you need to build a culture. And if you're winning games, that makes a big difference as well. I want to go and play for a winning team and a winning outfit. So, but I think the Gold Coast in general, I go back there a lot now. My mum's still there, and still in a family home in Service Paradise that we've had for 50 odd years. And I go back there and I sort of look at the Gold Coast and I go, it's a transient sort of population. It's a huge city now. It's the sixth biggest city in Australia, and so, but there's still a transient population there, and I think the Titans, they've got a pretty loyal supporter base, but it's very different to your mob, to Para, to Canterbury, because you're older and you've had great success and you've just got those traditions and a history, whereas the Gold Coast is only 18 years old. And so, the Titans are. But I think that even though it's a rugby league heartland, southeast Queensland, it's still a very, very, it's a competitive marketplace.
Yep.
The Broncos are still the number one ticket in town as far as a brand goes in southeast Queensland. And that even includes the Brisbane Lions, who obviously won the premiership last year in the AFL.
Yep.
But the Brisbane Broncos are still the number one brand in that town and in that region. Cowboys have really done a good job in Townsville in promoting the brand. They've had great success as well. But the Broncos, I think the western suburbs of Brisbane, heading out towards Ipswich, Toowoomba, all around there, I think there's room, well and truly, for another rugby league team. It's a booming area, and I think there's room for a team out that way. I mean, you've obviously got the Dolphins up Redcliffe Way, I think they've done a great job of promoting the Dolphins. But you have the Dolphins, the Bronx, you have the Titans on the Gold Coast, North Queensland Cowboys. But I think that western corridor, west of Brisbane, is a real rugby league heartland, and I think there's room for a rugby league team there. And there's a lot of people say, is there enough corporate dollars to sponsor or support a club there? 100% there is. A lot of money in that western corridor, and it's a very it's a really interesting landscape as far as when you take a closer look at it.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think maybe a team in Perth would be good, as well as a team in the NRL. I think they are looking to get about 20 teams, I think, in the future.
Yeah, why do you say a team in WA would be good? I mean, we've been there before. It's been tried. Are you talking about because of time zones for broadcasters?
Well, there is time zones, and I just think trying to make it more of a national game instead of a Eastern Seaboard game. Yeah,
I think you play to your strengths, though. Perth's such an AFL heartland. Now, I'm not saying, I mean, so is Melbourne. So the Storm have done a very good job in creating a fan base. So I suppose I take your point. I don't know. I think we've been there and done it.
Okay.
And it didn't work. So but maybe now, I mean, there's certainly the corporate dollar and the sponsorship would be there, but I just don't know if it's, jury's out. See, I think the PNG thing's got legs. I think when I hosted the World Cup in 2017, the Rugby League World Cup for 7, one of the best things I remember was the South Pacific countries, but the PNG, like their love at that national stadium in Port Moresby. They live and breathe rugby league. Now, I know it's difficult logistically, but it's difficult logistically with Perth. I think PNG, if it was a PNG North Sydney Bears type sort of setup, merge or whatever, play some games there, play a lot of games here. I think that's got that appeals to me much more than Perth.
Okay.
And it'd be interesting. Yeah, it's gonna be interesting how it all unfolds. But I agree with expansion. I don't. There's no argument with that. But I think certainly the South Pacific Island nations, and what we saw with Tonga, Samoa, Fiji, and then obviously PNG. I mean, they were almost my highlights of the Rugby League World Cup in 2017.
Yeah.
They were just extraordinary, and the passion and the following of their supporters. That sea of red with the Tongans when they came to Sydney, and we've seen it on a number of occasions now. And yeah, I think there's a real justification for that as part of expansion, more than WA, in my opinion.
Yep. No, that's fair enough. I mean, everyone's got one, I guess. Let's keep on going with that 2017 Rugby League World Cup, because you were the lead anchor of that with Channel 7. Probably a pretty special moment during your journalistic career. I mean, Channel 7 had those rights, with Channel 9 obviously having the full-time, I guess you could call it, rights. So Channel 7 getting a bit of the action.
Yeah, it was. I loved it. I mean, I sat in the studio some days and just went, wow. We've got rugby league. I'm hosting a Rugby League World Cup, and I've got people like Benji Marshall sitting beside me, and I've got people like Laurie Daly and Mark Geyer and Renee Gartner was great, and Ruan Sims. It was a really, really special tournament, and I think it was, as I just mentioned before, those South Pacific Island nations and PNG and the passion and Lebanon, Freddie's Lebanon. I mean, it was just great. It was a happy, uplifting event. The rugby league was fantastic, and the ratings were through the roof. And it was a really smart move by 7 to actually get them, because I think we thought they'd rate okay, but we never thought they'd get the ratings that they got. They were through the roof, okay. And I think it gave 7 a taste of like, right, wouldn't it be nice to have some more rugby league? Now, obviously, money talks, and Nine and Fox have sewn it up, but I think, and they do a very good job with it. But I think that Seven having a taste of it was, it was good. It was a lot of fun, and it was a huge honour to host it. And it was a big few years because I was coming off Rio, the Olympics in 2016, hosting them, and then going into the Rugby League World Cup in 2017, and then 2018, I was hosting the Gold Coast Commonwealth Games, which to me was one of the best games that I can remember ever. I thought it was just a wonderful spectacle. So it was a big few years, and certainly the Rugby League World Cup in 2017 it was never a dull moment. The rugby league was great. The colour and the passion of fans off the field and at the games was amazing. I mean, the Fijian prayer pre-game, the haka, it was just, it had it all, and that's why, again, I think viewers flocked to it because they just love watching it, and it was a great success for the network, for Seven, and certainly one of my favourite moments in broadcasting over a 39-year period.
You mentioned money talks. Do you think in the future, Channel 7 could get the rights to rugby league coverage?
I think it makes it difficult when they've got the AFL. I think you've got so much. Your pockets are so deep. Like you can't, and especially in this day and age with free-to-air television, like the advertising revenue's well and truly down. The audience shares dropping. I still think there's an appetite for free-to-air television, and obviously it was a big part of my career. But I think right now to come up with the money that they want, I think when you're paying an awful lot for the AFL, you're paying an awful lot for cricket, to go and then get rugby league, it makes it very, very difficult. And I think Nine obviously have got the tennis, they've got rugby league, they've got the Melbourne Cup now. And obviously Fox and KO are just a great product and a great brand across so many sports. So, but the money goes both, and with advertising revenue down, you can't just go and spend willy-nilly.
No,
you've got responsibility to shareholders, you've got responsibility, financial responsibility and corporate governance. So I think it's a bridge too far. You never say never. I mean, they'll have a crack. There's no doubts they'll have a crack, but I think you'll find Nine. I think a bit like Seven with AFL.
Okay.
I'm sure Channel 9 and Channel 10 would love the AFL, but it's Seven's baby, and so to speak. And I don't think the money and the budgets could see like, let's say, a Seven going and getting the two major football codes.
That's right. Yeah, true.
Well, sorry, two major football codes in this country.
Yes, that's right. Now, your wife, Chris Barth, she's a mad Parramatta fan, and New South Wales fan.
No, she's not just mad. She's absolutely. They talk about fanatical. She's absolute one-eyed eel and one-eyed blue. My wife. So it's interesting. We're all right around Parramatta times. We're usually on the same page because I like Para.
Yeah,
and I've always liked Para. But it's when we get to Origin, it gets the blue wig goes on, the blue scarf goes on, the blue sunglasses go on. Everything's blue. We have blue pies. We have blue everything. That's when it gets interesting in our household.
How is that banter then with when the Titans play Parramatta and during that Origin series?
Sorry, you still there?
Yeah.
You just dropped out. Oh, you're good. Parramatta v. No, yeah. See, I mean, I'm not just saying this because you're Parramatta, my wife's Para. There's a lot to be said of happy wife, happy life. But I actually do. If I had to say what my number two team would be, Para and Penrith would be right up there. Like I mean, the Bronx, I suppose, because I'm a Queenslander. But you know what? I've always liked Para and I've always liked Penrith. So it's not that intense when Gold Coast are playing Para. But it's very intense come Origin. It gets very willing. But it's friendly. It's friendly. It's all good fear and friendly banter. But she loves ribbing me, especially last year when you won it. I thought, I nearly had to leave the country, mate. It was
and it was a Parramatta player who pretty much won it for New South Wales as well.
Can you stop? Can you just stop it, please? Yeah, this is on loop in our household still, mate. About Mitchell Moses, mate. It's just. I've copped it, but anyway, he was incredible. He was, but this is the whole thing. The great thing about sport, and we've seen it with Olympics and Paralympics, people just step up. They grow a leg. As far as rugby, like Mitchell Moses just grew a leg. he pulled that Blues jumper on, and he's a good playmaker. Don't get me wrong, very good rugby NRL first grader. But mate, what he did when he came into that side, holy dooly!
Yeah.
It was just a masterful display. And you know what? He said to himself, "This is my moment. This is my opportunity." And he said, "I want to be regarded as an Origin player." And boy, oh boy, did he arrive on the stage big time! It was an extraordinary performance, and he was outstanding.
Yes, hoping he stays injury-free this year and can replicate that for the Eels this year, so that hopefully they
It's
get
going to be
back
an interesting
in the
year.
top 8.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting year for your boys. I like Jason Riles. I think Jason Riles is an outstanding choice. I think he was the out-and-out. And no disrespect to the other contenders, but I thought Riles was the one. And I've had a bit to do with him over the years when he's been at the Storm.
Okay.
And I think he's... in fact, I interviewed him at the State of Origin in Melbourne last year, pre-game, in front of about 400 guests at the MCG. And he struck me. He was just, I think, in the final stages of the final interviews at Para.
Okay.
And the way he spoke, and he's come through the Bellamy School as well, hasn't he? So
Yes.
he's come, and I think he was with Trent Robinson at Roosters. I think, yeah, that's right, isn't it? Sorry, I just had a mental block. So I think he came through some bloody good systems, and I think he spoke last year at that Origin so impressively. I think he's a really good get for Para. I think I don't know if he'll play finals. It's going to be very interesting, but I think that he is going to certainly... I think he's going to be a breath of fresh air for your boys, and I think he was definitely the right contender to get the gig.
The thing I like about this year is the unknown in terms of Jason Riles being the coach of what sort of football he wants his team to play, and we don't know what that sort of football will be. So until it's out in the field, and obviously he takes on his old master, Craig Bellamy, in round 1, so that'll be a cracking game, that one, for sure.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, when Para's up and going, it's I love when the Para faithful get going, and I think certainly gives them hope. He won't turn it around overnight, but I think he's a very, very astute choice, and I'm glad they went that way. And I think it's he to me was the number one contender, and I think the Eels off field. Through the interview process, I think they've got a good one.
Now, welcome back, and thank you for listening to part 1 of the interview with Jim Wilson. Now, this was recorded a few weeks ago now, and I really appreciate the time with Jim, for his time, I should say. It was a really interesting chat, as he said at the end of the interview, which you will find in part number 2, that it just felt like a 5-minute chat, but it went longer for that. So I appreciate, Jim, for your time, and hopefully, yes, we can catch up at a game in 2025. Now, if you would like to support the podcast, please buy me a coffee. Yes, not a real coffee, though I probably need one or two of them here and there to stay awake with all this editing and the like. But no, it is a virtual coffee, and what that can do is it can help with the costs of producing this podcast. Now, I will always bring it to you for nothing, but it does cost some money to do this podcast. So if you would like to support the podcast, then you can either do it as a one-off payment, or you can do it as a monthly payment as well. I'll put the link in the show notes, and also it'll be on my Instagram profile as well, so check that one out if you would like to help. Thank you to those that have helped in the past. I really appreciate that one, but as I said, I love what I do for you guys, the fans, the listeners, so I would love to keep on doing it and doing it and doing it and doing it forever. But it does cost money, and if you would like to support the podcast, then please buy me a coffee. I'd really, really appreciate it. Not only that, I also appreciate you guys listening to the podcast as well. If I can entertain 1-2 people, then I'm satisfied with that. But the podcast is going great guns. It's getting some really good listening numbers. So I really appreciate that one. And as I said, I love doing what I do. Stay tuned for a couple of days, in a couple of days' time, I should say, for part number 2 of the podcast with Jim Wilson. And let me know your thoughts about episode or part number 1 of the episode with Jim Wilson. That's all I have right now, but as I said, I'll be back in a couple of days' time with part number 2. There may also be some other content coming your way as well. Thank you very much for listening. I really appreciate it. And the Para Cave podcast, by the fan, for the fans. Go Para!
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Para Cave podcast. See you next time.